I'm on the train from my parents back to Lüneburg. The landscape of Schleswig-Holstein is passing by, but all I see are monocultures with little biodiversity. A brief research unfolds that the loss of biodiversity is one of the most underestimated climate dangers. I want to know more what is happening in my local area and about its implications. Back in Lüneburg, I decide to find out more about the topic. Luckily, studying sustainability sciences as my minor puts me right at the source.
However, my goal is not only to gain more knowledge about biodiversity and its decline,
but also to understand what can be done to address the issue. Therefore, I meet with Manuel. He's a researcher here at Leuphana University and especially interested in ecological restoration of grasslands.
We have to try to stop in some way the drivers that are causing biodiversity loss, and of course we have to try to reduce the impact of climate change. Of course, if we have destroyed habitats, and habitat destruction is one of the main causes of biodiversity loss, we have to restore this ecosystem and these habitats that we have lost.
What does it mean to restore ecological systems? And what role do grasslands play in this process?
So, ecological restoration could be defined as the process in which we recover we develop different kind of activities to recover the structure, the composition, and also the functioning of the system. Grassland are important ecosystem because as all the ecosystem that we have on Earth, and they have their own very specific biodiversity that needs to be protected because you cannot find that biodiversity in other ecosystems on Earth. So, although sometimes we think that or we think as forests as the main targets for restorations, where there is a grassland or where there has been a grassland traditionally managed for centuries, we have to keep that grassland. And in a grassland we can find like a lot of different species in a very reduced portion of land, and grasslands can also sequestrate carbon in the soil, and not only about the plant biodiversity, but they provide habitat for many other species. They provide resources for pollinators. So yeah, by restoring grasslands we can have more species, we can increase carbon sequestration, we can favor pollinators. So yeah.
I want to see how ecological restoration works in practice by visiting the orchard, a project of the university nearby. Arriving at the orchard, I see a lot of fruit trees on a large meadow, and also various flowers and insects. Above all, there are also a lot of students doing odd things. Luckily, Sumi, the student assistant for the project, can explain to me what this is all about. So, hi Sumi.
Hi.
Can you tell me what the Orchard Project is all about?
The Orchard Project is a plan from the ecological restoration stream of the minor, where we are given a plot of land in order to experiment about the learnings which we are doing in the second and the third semester directly as a practical experience. So that's another way for us to understand the local systems, or what are the understory pollinators that are within Lüneburg, or what are the animals that are around that ecosystem, or what are the pollinators that are essential in order to restore any sort of a restoration project in Lüneburg. So that is the only way for us to learn.
But what are the students doing here in the orchard?
This orchard was a paddock before, and there's a lot of agriculture around and almost none biodiversity. And we built this orchard and we tried to find out how different species impact the events of pollinators and how many pollinators are here. Because we have in Germany a struggle that there are less and less pollinators every year.
Pollinators, of course, are really important for the reproduction of plants, since they pollinate and sort of make plants able to produce fruit, which includes these fruit trees as well, and also, of course, every other flowering plant. But then pollinators are also important for animals like birds who prey on them and need them to eat. And I think yeah, pollinators also sometimes take care of different pests that can arise, and yeah, so they're just generally very important for animal and plant diversity. So I think generally if we compare it to what it was before, we can definitely say that it's become more diverse, and we do see pollinators around a lot. But for example, this year again, there has been a pretty large drought, and that, especially early in the year, it affects how the plants develop. So there can sometimes be less species in the understories, which of course also impacts the pollinators. And I think this year is also a year where there's very few butterflies in Germany. It might also be because of the drought, I'm not sure.
So our group is called Abiotic Butterflies. We are basically walking throughout the entire orchard, and we're trying to catch butterflies on certain transect lines. That means we have to walk for 5 minutes and then we're catching a butterfly. We're determining the weather that we caught that butterfly in, and we determine what kind of butterfly it is to collect as much data over the entirety of one semester, and we're comparing it to the cohorts that caught butterflies beforehand, so in the last semesters. And then we're trying to see if there's a trend in the populations of butterflies, and if it's upwards or downwards, and what kind of factors played into that. So that's basically our mission.
As I'm walking through the orchard, I have to think back to what Manuel told me about biodiversity in grasslands.
It's important to communicate people and to inform people that we all can do important things in our daily life for restoration. We also have to say them that we can do things in our own backyard that contributes to the whole restoration purposes.
What can we take home from your research to our own backyards?
So I think one really good step is to pay attention to not buy sterile plants, because some plants that you buy can't reproduce, and if you want to have continuous biodiversity, it's good to have plants that can be pollinated and produce fruit and then seeds and kind of spread around.
I would say try to increase butterfly population, because butterflies are really important pollinators, and if you catch if you have a lot of butterflies in your garden, that means there are also a lot of other insects, because the butterflies are so sensible that there are probably also a lot of other insects.
During my research process, I've learned a lot and gained a new awareness of the potential and importance of diverse matters. It seems this potential exists in almost all areas. Back home, I share this with my parents. They immediately show interest, and together we inspect our garden. There is still plenty of room for improvement. I'm eager to see the insights that will come from the Orchard project in the coming years, and I look forward to sharing them with my parents. Step by step, we aim to enhance biodiversity in our garden. And so can you.